सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
Bare Knuckle Bhakti presents The Gift of Desperation, a Bhakti recovery podcast. This is a 12-step based Bhakti-oriented space. Here we share our experience, strength, and hope in the spirit of recovery from addictions and associated behaviors. Welcome. Hey, wow, look who it is. It's one of my favorite people from the Bronx, and it's not Jenny. It's it's Mary Allison. Hey, Mary Allison. How you doing?
Hello. I
Hi.
am good. Happy to
I'm
be here.
I'm really glad you're here. So Mary Allison is a yoga teacher. We love Mary Allison. So I'm telling you that now. You not have to love Mary Allison because I do. And she's a yoga teacher in recovery from addictions, associated behaviors like codependency. Comes from a dysfunctional family, may I say so? And I mean, she's from New York and she's from the Bronx. I mean, and she's Catholic, so, well, she's raised Catholic. So,
Yeah.
So, she's also, she leads up the Bhakti Recovery Group meetings at the Bhakti Center every Fridays. And she incorporates that with a regular meeting, and you do some asana as well.
I do asana and meditation.
Okay, so I'll let you explain that in a sec. So yeah, that's Mary Allison, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's start quickly with just a little bit about you right this minute. So you're teaching at the Bhakti Center. You're doing a Bhakti Recovery Group meeting with some asana involved in that. And where else and so explain a little bit about that, and then also explain a little bit about, and then you can tell us also where else you teach yoga. And what kind of yoga you teach.
Okay. So for Bhakti Recovery Group, it's a 90-minute format, and we do a 45-minute meeting. So we start with prayers. We start with reading through the 12 steps. I usually do some like a coda prayer. I've been doing step 3. Because that's what I've been working on. And I feel like that's like a nice general step to embrace in that moment, the moment of just surrendering. So we do that, and then we read from the Bhagavad Gita, share. We open up the floor, and it's been a pretty intimate group. So it's been like just kind of a discussion back and forth, which has been really nice. And then we usually end with like 30 to 45 minutes of light asana and mostly meditation. A lot of people that come usually do the yoga class right before it. So I don't really go crazy with physical stuff. It's more of just like twisting and kind of moving out any stuck energy after talking about heavy shit. And we end usually in like yoga nidra.
Nice. That sounds like the perfect yoga session for me.
It's been really
amazing.
Sweet. Yeah.
It sounds so good. And so you teach yoga also somewhere else. Oh, what time is that then? That's on Fridays at what time?
That's on Fridays at 7:30 p.m.
7:30 p.m.
And it's on the Bhakti Center yoga schedule. But
okay,
I mean,
so
you don't have to sign up. People can sign up if they want, just to like hold themselves accountable. But it is donation based, and you don't have to sign up. You can just show up. I will be there.
Wow.
And it is usually in our brand new pretty space in 5E on the 5th floor.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you for doing that
Yeah,
service, Mary Allison. That's such a
you're
big
welcome.
service.
Thank you.
Opening up that space for people who love yoga and who love recovery and who are trying to get, get to be that better themselves and using both of those tools. So after that service that you do, which is so appreciated, you also teach yoga somewhere else. Where
I
is it that you
do.
teach yoga?
I do. I also teach regular yoga at the Bhakti Center on Tuesdays at 6 p.m.
Oh,
But
good. What kind of what kind
yeah,
of yoga are you doing? You do more of the lighter yoga?
it's like a hatha flow. It's
Oh,
labeled
nice.
as our Bhakti Flow signature class. But
Okay,
there's a little like kirtan in there, a little philosophy talk, and movement.
nice.
Um, yeah, it's like a mix of hatha and vinyasa. But I also teach hot yoga at another studio called Heatwise, there's a couple of locations in the city. Couple in Brooklyn. There's one on Bowery, and that's
And where do
just
you
more
teach?
of I teach at all of them, and we
Oh,
just
okay,
opened
okay.
a location on the Upper West Side,
Oh, what
um,
street?
80th in Amsterdam.
I used to hang out at 80th in
Yeah,
Amsterdam, but that was when it was a rough
yeah.
neighborhood.
Oh,
Now
it
it's
is
all like,
not a rough neighborhood at all.
really? It's
No,
so funny. Oh my God. That was like not a great
no,
neighborhood when I was growing up.
no. It's like
That was so
bougie
crazy. That's
city.
kind of,
Yeah,
wow. That's so funny how New
yeah.
York has
Lots of
changed.
townhouses and mm,
Oh
Cartier
my
bracelets
God.
and whatnot.
No
But it's
way. That can't be. I haven't been up there in so long. Well, at least not on 80th in
yeah.
Amsterdam. I haven't been there in so long. I have to check that out.
Well,
Anyway,
it's not as bougie as the East Side. It's more like I feel like it's more like old money New York on the West
y-
Side.
yeah, it's also a little bit more creative money. It's not
Yeah.
like that
Eh,
freaking
It's
waspy,
not like
weird
trust
Upper
fund
East Side.
money.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
Yeah.
like that waspy, weird Upper East Side money where, yeah, no, 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 no. Sorry, I don't want to be judgy. I'm not being judgy here.
No, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that studio is more of like their slogan is hot yoga feels good. So the whole point is to just make people feel good in their bodies and play good music. So I love that. So I have a lot of creative
Space.
leeway to just do
Mm,
fun things, and I bring in a lot of mantra music. I base all my classes around like the moon and chakras, and we're like oming and we're doing all the things. So whether they want spirituality or not, they're getting it.
I love it.
But it seems to be working. So yeah. And then I'm
Good.
also on a digital platform for my non-New York people at Lions Den Digital.
Really? Is that
And
your own thing or do you work through somewhere else?
no, that's it's for Lions Den, which is a studio I taught at for about 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And when the world shut down, we had to pivot, as the kids say, and we launched a whole new business, Lions Den Digital, and we had a lot of like live classes daily. They still have live classes, but it's more of a hybrid situation. But we also filmed a lot of like specialized content. So
Mm,
I don't teach at the physical studio anymore, but I am still on the platform, and I filmed a lot of things before I left in September. So there's new stuff of me coming out, and I have like a whole catalog on there. And there's
nice.
like hundreds of videos from other great teachers also.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, so I'm going to start asking questions now. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. Dum, dum.
So, so you were born and raised in the Bronx.
Correct.
Describe So describe to me, first of all, describe to me what it was like growing up as Mary Allison in your community and in your family home. And what were some of the challenges that you faced growing up there?
Um, so my neighborhood was predominantly like Irish Italian. Um, it was a very small town kind of neighborhood. Like everybody knew everybody. Most of my parents and most of my friends' parents all grew up there. So it was like just generation after generation of this neighborhood. And I didn't, it didn't feel challenging at the time, but like in retrospect, now that I'm adult and I look back, I'm like, oh, okay, I lived in a bubble. I didn't really know anything else. There was no like diversity or anything. uh, the only, for a long time, the only person of color that I knew was this guy that used to come pick up money from my grandmother because, she helped the guys out in the social club next door. But my family I'm one of five siblings.
Ooh. Are you
Yeah,
Italian? Are you Italian
my
fully or you're Irish Italian?
no, I'm Italian, Irish, German.
Okay.
My mom is Italian and my dad is Irish German.
Okay.
And my mom's side is, rural Italian, like typical stereotypical Italian Catholic. Quite the opposite of my dad's very church oriented Irish German family. And
Catholic, of course.
yeah, what?
Catholic, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
both Catholic. But working class family. My dad was on the police department my whole life, and my mom did like random stuff. She had a house cleaning business for a while, but she was mostly like took care of us. So I mean, there were five of us. We were not
Yeah.
easy
I
to
don't
take
see where you're
care of.
gonna have
Yeah.
I don't see where you're gonna have time
No.
to be working when you have five kids.
No, yeah. So, I have three brothers and my sister, and I'm like second to last in that lineup. So growing up by the time they got to me, my parents were very like much more lenient. And my little brother is 3 years younger than me, so I like would take care of him. I was like 8 years old, staying home with him, and it was fine. My grandmother was downstairs, and we had the guys in the social club next door who would watch us, and it was just everyone kind of took care of each other. But my family was very, you had to be loud to be heard. And like, at dinner, like we had this saying, slow man loses. Like if you're not at the table and you don't grab that food, you ain't eating. So it was very much that it was very much that vibe with a lot of things. Like if you're not speaking up, you're not getting attention, you're not getting what you need. And it was like a lot of, I think, like the way of getting attention was to kind of just either like do things as you're supposed to do, or just rebel and like get yelled at, and like that's the attention that you get. And I always I kind of like walked that line, like a little bit of both as a kid. And then when I got to like 7th grade, I completely like jumped over to the dark side and became a bit of a problem child.
So what do you think, happened then? So were you feeling uncomfortable in that household? Did you feel a little trampled on? Were you, or can
Um,
you be more specific, or is it something that's not really
I felt,
memorable?
I don't really know what made me feel so uncomfortable. I think, I think it was just like the fact of being somewhat like muted in a way. You know, I
Mm,
wasn't like, I never didn't feel loved, but I was also an independent type of kid. Like I always wanted to do things myself, and I always like, I'll do it. I'll take care of, you know, my little brother and blah blah blah. But then it kind of was like, um, then that was just kind of expected, you know? And you know, there would be times where I would express emotion or express how I felt about something, and it was just like, oh, you're being dramatic. Like that. What are you talking about? You don't feel that. You're not depressed. Like you're not you know, that's not true. You just want attention. Like you just want me to pay attention to you. You just want me to buy
yeah.
something. And it's like and it wasn't, you know, we weren't easy kids. And, you know, my parents did the best that they could, and by the grace of God, none of us, you know, were in jail or fucking dead, or, you know, because we very well could have been. But then it was also like, I don't know that it was so much my family dynamic that it was my neighborhood dynamic,
Mm,
because a lot, you know, I grew up in the 90s, so you spent most of your time outside, and
yeah.
everyone hung out in the neighborhood in the neighborhood park.
Yeah.
And just
Of
just
course.
just for context, the park that we hung out in the 70s was known as Needle Point Park. So it was just the culture of the neighborhood, and everyone, I mean, majority of everyone that I grew up with had older siblings, and like, you know, they all smoked weed, they all drank, and the neighbor, like we knew that if we stood on the corner by the corner store and asked the right person, they would buy us 40s and Phillies, and we would have fun. And it was just kind of like what you did. Like I did that in the 7th grade. And I think
Yeah.
now, like,
I
my
think in New
niece
York,
is,
in New York, we grew up really fast, especially
yeah,
in the
like,
70s, 80s,
yes, my niece
90s.
is in the 7th grade, and I'm like, can't, I can't fathom that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Um,
It's crazy.
it's insane. But that's just like what we were doing. And, you know, we would have like a crew of like 60 kids, and everyone was just doing something. And it was more like being out in the world. And I guess that like sense of independence in the neighborhood kind of made me feel like
Mm.
I could do whatever I wanted. And I became very sneaky because I knew what my parents expected of me. You know, my dad was a cop.
Mm.
I knew what was very wrong and what I shouldn't have been doing, but I also knew how to fly under the radar because I came from a big family, and it was easy to fly under the radar because my brothers were so out of control that it was, I just got really quiet. I got really quiet, and I hid a lot of things, which I was also really used to because I used to do that with food as a kid. I would like take stuff from the refrigerator and hide it in my room and then like binge eat it, which is definitely where I think most of my substance issues came from, is food
Mm.
for sure. That was my first drug of choice when I was feeling
Yeah.
ignored or feeling I don't know, left out, I guess. I I had food. I would literally eat like a whole loaf of bread with pickles and cheese. And my mom would be like, where the fuck is this food going? I don't understand. And I would just, I don't know, but it started with that. So like I knew how to be sneaky with it. And I got really quiet. I I talk to my mom about it now, like being so young, and she's like, no, I didn't know. Like I know, I made sure, I would never.
You're breaking up.
Really. Oh, okay.
It's better.
She just is very surprised that she didn't know, and I always make it very clear that like I made sure you didn't know.
Yeah,
like it wasn't.
of course.
Of course you didn't know.
Of
But
course she
like
didn't know. I mean, that's like definitely. It's like I never knew. It's like, of course you didn't. We took such measures that
right.
you didn't know.
That was
that
the
was the
whole
point of it.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as I got older, as a teenager, it just got way worse because now I thought like I was a veteran and I knew all the things, and I was in a lot of places that a child of 16 or 17 had no business being in.
Yeah.
But
I think back in the days, this was kind of normal.
it's just
for
what it
most.
was. And
Yeah.
I became friends with a lot of older people. And that's just kind of how everything evolved. I was doing coke at fucking 17 years old. So yeah, like senior in high school. And it was just
my first woola, my first line of coke, I think I was 14, which is insane actually, if you think about it.
That is insane. Yeah, that's when I started doing ecstasy. 1998. Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
And it's wild because now, like, as a yoga teacher and being in this world, that like sensation and connection to self that I got from ecstasy, I get in yoga. And like I remember having this moment in this very intense 90-minute Sunday service, as we called it, at Lion's Den, this moment of like being fully overheated and just like rising up from a forward fold. And I had this like rush of euphoria, and it literally felt like when the drugs hit. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, this. And like I had this moment of like, this is what I've been looking for in everything else. Like it's right here. So it's wild to like connect the two and to realize that I've been chasing that feeling since I'm 14 years old, which I've been thinking about a lot, coming up on 40. But yeah, it's wild, and then high school was just party town. I was not a good student at all.
Did you go to your local high school?
I went to my local girls' Catholic high school.
Catholic school, of course. You went to
Catholic school, which I almost didn't even get into. I had to go. It was like the only high school I got into, and I had to go to summer school for it because I didn't apply myself. I wasn't dumb. I just didn't study. I started smoking weed in 7th grade. So after that, like I wasn't focused on schoolwork.
Absolutely.
I was,
School was so boring.
I was always in trouble with my teachers. I had a smart mouth. I was just not good at following rules at all.
I haven't heard that in so long, a smart mouth.
I mean, it was true. I had a teacher drag me out of the classroom in my desk in the 8th grade, like, and left me in the hallway. Yeah. And I was a big girl, so props to him. He was little. But yeah, I mean, I have to give it to my mom in high school. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have made it out. she quite literally
Wow.
like dragged me out of the house on a numerous occasion.
What
Um,
dragged you out of the house to go to school?
to go to school. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She, it wasn't easy being my mom as a teenager.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure.
I was, yeah, I did whatever I wanted. I was climbing out of windows and having people in my house having smoke parties in the middle of the night. Um, but, but, yeah. And then after high school, I went to a trade school. And of course, I like made friends with the potheads. And that's where I met my soon to be ex-husband when I was
Wh-
18.
What trade school did you go to? I'm just curious.
I went to a medical assisting program,
Okay.
be a medical assistant, because I wanted to be a nurse, but I didn't get into any colleges
Of course.
because I showed up to my SATs hungover with no pencil or calculator the first time.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it wasn't good. I didn't really think about like the long run of
Yeah,
things.
either did
I was
I. There was no
Yeah,
consequence. It was like, whatever, it'll work out someday, somehow, some way.
yeah, I'll
Some
figure it
way.
out. I'm
It'll
fine,
be fine. Yeah,
right.
totally.
And like with that sense, it's something I realized as I got older that as I leaned on the laurels of like being part of a big supportive family.
Right.
Like, yes, there was a lot of tough love and just like, all that, but the dysfunctionality was very buried. It was
Mm,
more in like tone and um like I guess like you ride or die no matter what happens type of thing. It was never like I'll throw you under the bus and like leave you on the street.
mm.
It was more of like you better do this, and if you don't, I don't know. It was like I can't really explain it, but they always there was always like that fallback. Like I knew that no matter what I did, I would always have someone
Your
to bail me
family.
out.
Right, right, right,
Right.
right, of course.
Um, quite literally as I
Yeah.
got a little older, I was the very stereotypical cop kid. Um, and I very much leaned into like the persona of my brothers, and that kind of protected me from like allowing my sensitivities to show. It was easy to just be their little sister, and people wouldn't fuck with me because of who I was, because of what my last name was. So that was like a blessing and a curse, is what I'm realizing now. So yeah, when I met my ex-husband when I was 18, that's kind of where everything went very downhill.
Why is
And
that?
that was like, he was not anyone who would have been accepted in my neighborhood. He was a dark-skinned Puerto Rican from the South Bronx.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah,
I should not even be
yeah,
laughing. I could just see it though. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And he happened to be in the car of a friend of mine who picked me up from school, and he like offered me a Cinnabon
A
and the rest.
Cinnabon.
He had like
There
a
were no.
box of Cinnabons on his lap,
Oh,
like
you
the
mean like the
Entenmann's,
Entenmann ones? Yeah, the
the
Entenmann. Okay.
Entenmann's, honey
Yeah, yeah, of
buns,
course.
whatever.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
But he
yeah,
offered me one of those, and then the rest was history. We were like dating the next day. So, um, and it was supposed to be this casual thing because I didn't do boyfriends. because I got my heart broken at 15 by someone who was supposed to be my friend, and he humiliated me. And after that, I was like, no, I don't do boyfriends, blah, blah, blah. But deep down, I was just a hurt little girl.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me, I'm going to make you fall in love with me in 6 months. And I was like, okay, no, you're not. And then fast forward to 6 months later.
You're marrying him. You're on the altar.
No, I mean, we were together for like 7 or 8 years before we got married.
Oh, wow.
But
Okay.
it was a casual thing. And then like, the second he started like pulling away or being distant, I like tried to do whatever I had to do
You
to
latched on.
keep him. Right.
Yeah.
And he didn't smoke weed when I first met him because he was on probation. He and I remember like the first time we hung out, I like rolled a blunt and I like passed it to him. He was like, no, I don't smoke. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't smoke? Like you have to like smoke. What are we supposed
What do you
to
mean you don't smoke?
What
What kind of
like
shit
what
is
do
that?
what's that supposed to mean? And I made him smoke. Well, I made him smoke. Come to find out, years later, he only smoked dust at that time and was like not, yeah,
I
and
don't
was not
smoke
smoking
weed
weed.
because it's
And he pretended for years that it was me that made him start smoking again. So that was
okay.
like the first hook of like, trying to make me out to be a bad influence or like, and I'm
Yeah, him not taking
whatever.
responsibility and pushing that onto you, basically.
Right. But fast forward. Well, I mean, he was probably doing it then if he was doing it a couple of months in. I found out that him and his friends used to put dust and Spanish fly in all the weed that we smoked. So
Spanish
I was
fly doesn't
being,
work.
yeah.
That's
I mean, I was
bullshit.
being right, but dust does.
Yeah.
Dust is
Ugh,
crazy.
I know.
But I was being drugged and I didn't know it.
Jesus.
And I don't know when it started, and I don't know, like the full effects of it because I was also like willingly doing drugs.
Mm.
And yeah, but a lot of my codependency was very much magnified in that relationship because we were both dependent on substances. And then the closer and closer we got, we were more dependent on each other, especially
Yeah.
the first
In an
time he got
unhealthy
locked
way.
up. Oh, very unhealthy. He
Yeah.
got locked up. He got locked up while we were actually broken up. We were broken up for like 2 or 3 weeks. I kicked him out because I found dick pics on his America Online account. That's how old I am.
Oh my
AOL
gosh.
accounts. Yeah, but then when he got locked up, I got the phone call because we had lived together for a while. And I, of course, like couldn't leave him in jail. And I got hooked in then. And he was away for like almost 2 years, maybe like 1.5 years. And I would like go see him.
Am I allowed to ask what he did? You
He
could
did a
tell me none of you.
plethora of things.
Okay, so it was just a chart.
It was a chart, a
Okay.
file of sorts. But he was like up near fucking Canada. So I would go on his weekends and
like in
like
Buffalo?
take bus further than Buffalo.
Oh my God.
Like literally in the yard of one of the facilities he was at was the border to Canada. So you would be standing in the US and then standing in Canada, 1 foot in each. But I would like leave on a Friday night and get there Saturday morning. And then like that would be my whole weekend. And I did that religiously. Like I did that. His family, like his own mother didn't even do that. So that, you know, then he, I guess, saw that that's who I was. And of course did and said anything to keep me in his life. But meanwhile, you know, he was like promising his baby mama that he was gonna come out and get them an apartment and all this stuff. And like all these things that I found out after the fact, I was just like mind blown. So a lot of the stuff that I'm dealing with now is how did I let this go so under the radar? Like, how did I not know that this was happening? So I'm in a very deep space of forgiving myself because I have to remind myself that I was on mind-altering drugs since I'm 14 years old. And when I was supposed to be developing and like finding my feet in the world, my head was in the clouds and I had no actual idea of what reality was. So when I like jumped into, you know, a quote unquote adult relationship, how is that going to turn out? You know, there's like no, I was set up for failure because I was not clear.
And not
so
only
that's been
that,
like
when you spoke about your mother and she said she didn't know, and you said, well, that's the point. I tried to make sure that you didn't. And I think you can use that with their boyfriend. I'm sure he did
right.
not. That
Oh,
he went through great
100%.
measures so that you didn't know.
But he like did and he didn't, because a lot of the time he would do it in plain sight. And then when I would call it out, he would say, oh, I did that because I know you don't trust me and I was testing you.
Oh my
And he
God.
did, yeah, there was a lot of mental abuse on top of it because he knew, you know, he knew what he could get away with me. And
Gaslighting and
also,
manipulation.
oh, big time. He would like literally flip it on me and say, oh, well, why are you looking? Like, you don't trust me. That's why I put that there. Like, I did that on purpose because I know you don't trust me and I'm testing your loyalty and like all that. So that always put me in a place to like prove my loyalty to him. So I did a lot of things that, I mean, I should be in jail for. But he knew he was like a master manipulator. And you know, he also was not well in his own right. And he lived many different lives and had many different personalities. And, you know, a lot of things came out after the divorce, but I downplayed the trauma of it for a long time because I was very much in a space of like, well, I put myself in this position and I guess I deserved it.
Yeah, my own fault,
Right.
my own fault. I made my bed, I sleep in it.
Yeah, and I didn't really get the magnitude of it until I started going to therapy. And like, I would casually say things about it to my therapist, and she's like, wait. That was like the norm that happened? And I'm like, yeah, you know, I don't know. And she's like, well, that's not okay. Like,
That's not healthy. That is not healthy.
Not okay. So, you know, and I've been divorced for over 10 years now. I got divorced in August of 2011. And I'm like just now really starting to unpack the depth of it.
I can so relate to you.
No.
I can so relate to you. It was the same with my relationship. I've also been divorced for about in 2012. And I'm not just now starting to unpack it, but I'm starting to heal now. And it's taken that long. It's taken that long.
It's a lot.
It is a lot because you don't want to admit the things that happen and you don't want to, you know, fact is this. When we're in a relationship, especially a very highly unhealthy codependent relationship, I think fact is this, that yes, these things happen, but yes, in a way, we might feel that we're not, well, I'll speak for myself. I didn't feel like I volunteered for it, but I tolerated it and I let it happen. And I cannot punish myself for that. I have to say, okay, that happened. I let it happen. He's not a monster. He's not a horrible person. He's a sick individual,
Mm-hmm.
just as I am, and he's got his stuff to deal with and I've got mine. And until I got to
Right.
that space, it was very challenging and very painful. It's a very painful
Yeah.
process. So kudos
Well,
to you. Is that like something anyone would even say anymore? Kudos.
kudos. Yeah. But yeah, you get that. I was able to forgive before I forgave myself
Yeah.
because I, especially after the divorce started,
Oh, you're coming
his
out. You're going in and out again.
after the hello,
Yeah.
after the divorce stories and his friends or things, and I like realizing a lot of stuff, realized he was not an okay individual. He had a lot of stuff, and it was easier for me to give.
Okay, wait a second. You're still going in and out. I know you're saying it's easier for you to give. It was easier for you to forgive him than it was for yourself. Maybe
Right.
you want to take one of the earplugs out again. See what that does. No, maybe both of the earplugs. Right. So I guess it was easier so that's what we just said. Good. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a lot easier because I didn't see myself as having any issues or any trauma or like holding on to things until pretty recently, especially like newly in sobriety. A lot of things that I repressed are coming up, and I'm like, oh, well, that's why I'm so codependent, because I was trying to always prove myself as a kid, and I was trying to always get validation in a loud environment, and I did anything to be accepted. And I was the fat girl who had a great personality and a pretty face, so I always hung out with the boys. And then when I lost that baby fat, I like leaned into using my hot new bod as like a tool of validation. And then
How old
that
were you
turned into
then? 17?
like 15, 16.
15, 16. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
that parlayed into, being the party girl and like, oh, I'm down to hang out. Like, yeah, let's do it. And that's just how that went. And then, even after my divorce, like I was pretty sober for like the year right before my divorce, because I started doing yoga and I wanted to do more yoga. And the more yoga I wanted to do, the less drugs I wanted to do. And that really opened my eyes to what was happening. And it was like in a yoga class, like getting up into wheel pose, that I realized I needed to get a divorce. So
Wow.
there was that. Yeah. The teacher would always ask, like, close your eyes, and the first thing you think of that doesn't make you happy, like offer your wheel post. And my husband would come up in my brain. And at first I was like, oh my God, I can't think that. But then as it kept happening, I was like, we got to do something. And I would literally go home and like stand in front of my door and chant the Ganesh mantra for like 5 minutes before I went into the house.
Wow.
Yeah. So, as cliche as it is, yoga saved my life. I don't know where I'd be if I didn't
How does
step
your
into a yoga
family,
class.
so coming from that like working class police family, Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic, Bronx typical family, what did they think about you doing yoga? What was there? Was it like, what the heck is she doing? Or were they like really open to it?
I wouldn't say they were really open to it. My mom always tells me to not forget Jesus Christ. But for them, it
Oh,
was
that's
more of,
beautiful. That's
yeah,
beautiful. I
it was,
love that actually.
yeah. I mean, they're very strong in their beliefs, and I appreciate that about them very much.
Yeah.
Um, but it was never. It was always kind of just like a workout thing to them. It wasn't. It
Okay.
wasn't
So they
really
didn't
like
fully
a
understand. Yeah. Okay.
spiritual thing. No,
Okay.
until I did my teacher training and I started like mentoring with Yogi Charu, and he's like
Oh
trained in
my
the
gosh.
Himalayas, brahmachari, just like real deal. And that's when my mom would always be like, "Don't forget Jesus Christ, Mary Allison."
Don't forget Jesus Christ, Maria.
And like I would never, I mean, I'm more of a Blessed Mother girl, but you know,
Yeah, that's what you and I have in common. You and I have that
yeah,
really deeply in common. That whole,
yeah,
yeah.
very much Blessed Mother. Yeah, I mean, she's on my neck. It was my grandmother's pendant.
Oh,
But
beautiful.
I mean, I personally believe that it's all connected anyway, and Jesus was a mystic yogi. But they my mom was just happy that I was doing something that made me feel good.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Both of my parents, because as much as they tried to accept my ex-husband, and they tried to, because at one point, when he got out of jail, he was a changed man, and like, we got engaged, and he like went to church to get baptized and confirmed and all that so that we can get married in church, and he like turned a new leaf. And my mom will tell you to this day that he's the reason that she went back to church. So, well, because she like thought that he was, actually for real. Um, so the yoga thing, like my mom was just happy that I was doing that and that I was feeling good. And then especially like after I got divorced, like that's what was keeping me together. So
Mm,
whatever's going to keep me happy and around for them, because I went MIA for a while when I was with my ex.
right.
And yeah, now being at the Bhakti Center, and being much more interested and uh invested in Krishna consciousness, it's really not, I don't know if the feelings are the same. I think it's more of like, what are you doing? Are you joining a cult vibe? But we don't really talk about it. I talk about things and they're kind of just like, okay, Um, but
Well,
that's
that's why
fine. I
that's,
don't.
you know what, that is fine. And you know what? I think everyone's got, you know what? If you want it to be a cult and you want to join a cult, then you can make it culty. If you don't want to join a
Right,
cult and you like the things in bhakti that you like, then it doesn't have to be culty. It depends on
right, but
what
you
you're in
could
there
just
for and
say
how.
that. Right, you could say that with Catholicism, and
With
you could say that
anything.
with anything.
Absolutely.
So
And it's not like, I mean, a real cult anyway qualifies as like, give me all your money, like Krishna consciousness
right,
and the Bhakti
it's not
Center is
that.
not about that. Not at all. It's like
No,
donation
not at
based. Everything
all.
is, it's all
No,
different. But this is the
and it's
thing. And this is the thing. Some people are very vulnerable. If you have a very broken,
yeah,
vulnerable person, um, doing things that are joining a spiritual or religious community, they're very open and very vulnerable to getting hurt, and they might not perceive things in the most you know healthy ways. It's like, this
right.
is a cult, they're trying to make me, and maybe that is their experience. you
Yeah,
know
and people say that. A lot of people say that about yoga, and a lot
yeah.
of it's a big. It can be, anything can be culty. Um, but yeah, and I will give it to my toxic marriage. That's like how I got into bhakti, and how I was exposed more to, yoga and all that. So it's like I
So
do
where
have
did
these
you,
moments of
oh, sorry. So where did you find bhakti yoga? Like, how did you specifically find that? And how did you find the bhakti recovery group? And how did you find recovery? And how did that happen for you then? So now we're here
um
in the now. And
right.
so,
Well, the first time I went to the Bhakti Center was during my first teacher training in 2011, which was when I was going through my divorce. Like I literally
right.
started my divorce process the second weekend of my teacher training. And Yogi Charu was a co-facilitator for that. And he was the philosophy guy and he was talking about that all the time. But there was this one girl in my training we called her the Kirtan girl. And she would invite people to Kirtan every weekend. Like, come on, come on. And at this point, it was at Broome Street Temple, like old school Broome Street Temple. And finally, like after like a couple of weekends of like, letting my walls down a bit, I was like, I'll come. Like, let's do it. Let's go. So I went, and my first kirtan was at Broome Street with Gauravani and the Mayapuris.
Oh,
And
that's a pretty
yo,
damn good
it was
lineup.
sick. And like, Mayapuris, like this was over a decade ago. They were young and they were fucking awesome. And
Yeah.
like, Keisha on the mridanga, and just like everyone was dancing and there were children there, and it was just like this whole vibe. And I was just
It's
instantly
so
like, this is
cool.
amazing. I love this.
So it was the
Um,
kirtan that hooked you.
Kirtan, definitely. So music, always, forever.
Mm,
Um, so that was like the beginning of that. And then, Charu brought us to the Bhakti Center a couple of times for like talks and for more kirtans. And I continued to do that, but then I went down a bad rabbit hole because I connected with old friends. And
mm.
20, from like 2013 to 2016, I was in a horrific downward spiral of like cocaine every day and just like bad men and just dating dudes
Wow.
who also like to do cocaine. And it was just not good. And then that's how I found the Power Yoga Studio through someone that I worked with. And I did this 40 Days to Revolution program with them. And this was a Baptiste yoga place. And I did this program, and I was literally doing the program to stop doing coke every day. And I was in this small group, and we would talk about like what we need to let go of, what we need to let go of. And I just kept saying partying. And this girl was like, well, get more specific. And I was like, I need to stop sniffing coke and drinking tequila on a daily basis. That's why I'm here. And it was kind of just like, okay. But that was like the unraveling of that. And then I signed up, even though I already had a teaching certificate, I signed up for their teacher training. And it was
Right.
very much focused on like self-inquiry and all that. And I remember, my best friend who I would hang out with all the time, summer of 16, she drank, but she didn't party like I did. But she had to deal with me. And I was not an easy person to deal with in that
Mm,
state. And she literally told me, she's like, all right, well, you're either going to do this teacher training because you know that works for you, or you're going to go to rehab. Like, what? Pick one. And I was like, oh, you're so right. Okay. So I did the teacher training, and that was the last time I did coke.
get
October 8th
out.
of 2016. Yeah.
I love
The
that.
teacher,
That's amazing.
yeah.
That's really
But
amazing
I
because,
like,
you don't hear that often, you know.
yeah, it was it was a life-changing experience, that teacher training. It helped me like really look at myself, and I will
Nice.
always be so grateful for that space that was given to me. But then I was like at that studio for a while, and power yoga was like the physical thing that I needed. It literally kicked my ass and like
Sure,
helped me
sure.
get my mojo back.
Mhm.
And
Especially in
like
that
I always,
age. I mean, I think like that kind of yoga in that age is appropriate. You know,
right,
it's a lot of
exactly.
people, we have that energy and we want to, you know, like when I started doing yoga, I needed that energy too. And then like I went into hatha yoga and now it's just like all about the nidra yoga. It's just like chill, get my
Right.
nervous system down. You know, it's all, you know, it's all good. It's all good for different,
Yeah. I mean,
different,
I started
different types.
with hatha too. But then, I always wanted to go back to the Bhakti Center because it always like stuck with
Held
me.
a place in your heart.
Uh,
Yeah.
Always. But I never felt worthy. Like I never felt like I could go there. Like I just felt like a shit human and I couldn't go there.
Oh,
Um, and then, I started really doing work on myself. And like as I evolved into my true self and I shed a lot of things, I moved down to the East Village, I don't know, like almost 4 years now. And it's literally up the block from me. And um, there was a point in time where I was teaching Y12SR there with the girl who actually got me into kirtan. And it just wasn't like I was teaching it there, but it like wasn't really picking up. So they cut it off. But then when I moved back down here, I always told myself, you have to go to the Bhakti Center. Like, go. Why aren't you going? Why aren't you going? So finally, like 2 years after living here, I finally started going there for classes again. And I reached out to their recovery department and said we should start doing this. And I started doing Y12SR there, but like I was still very much like smoking weed. And I like would talk about it in these programs, and like people that came like were also kind of like on and off, so it worked. But then that's how I heard about the Bhakti Recovery Group, because I was teaching Y12SR there, and Diana reached out to me, and she
Princess
told
Di,
me,
shout out. Whoop, whoop.
yes. And she shared with me that they were trying to get state funding to the Bhakti Center as like an official recovery program. And she was like, since you teach it there, we want like some input on like what helped you, how we can build this and all that. So she's the one that told me about the Bhakti Recovery Group. And I didn't realize that it was like a separate thing. I just thought that's what it was, like part of Bhakti Center. But then I realized that it wasn't, and it was something different. And I was like, oh, well, why are we not collabing more with that? And like, why isn't this a consistent thing? Because we were only doing it like the first and fourth Sunday of the month. But it's like, this is something that is so needed consistently. Like if it's not consistent, it's not going to work. It's like sobriety.
Yeah.
Consistently, and you're not at it every day. Like how is this going to work? And yeah, I mean, that's how I met. Well, I met you from Wisdom of the Sages, really.
Yeah, we met in the Sage group, right? It was
Yeah.
just me and you at the end. It was so great. I think you and I scared everyone off, actually. That's what I think. I think that we scared everyone.
Maybe. I don't know. I got my Vedic astrology chart briefly read recently, and
Oh, you got it.
I'm an explosive slutty witch.
Oh, that's horrible. I don't see you that way.
My eighth house is very shamanic, apparently, is
Oh,
what I'm
I get that.
told.
I
And
see
I
that.
have
I see that.
Saturn and Mars in my chart. So I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. My best friend used to always tell me I had sex in the eyes. So that makes a lot of sense. But
Seduction.
yeah, sure. But yeah, so that's how I got to the Bhakti Recovery Group. But I mean, also Wisdom of the Sages really like brought me back. I forget.
Another shout out. Wisdom of the Sages.
It came on my shuffle or something, or there was just like someone sent me an episode. I don't know. But then I started listening to it, and I'm a big person on like sound, and Kastuba's voice just kind of did something to me. It's
I
so
know. He's got
calming.
such a great
And I'm
voice.
just
I know.
like, oh, And I had such a crush on it for a minute. Like when I first started listening to it, just like I needed to just like hear his voice. Like like it brought a nice calm, like
Yes.
comfort over me, you know? Um, and yeah, and like just listening to that more made me want to study more. And then I joined like a beginning Bhakti group. We do community groups at the Bhakti Center. So I joined the beginning Bhakti
Mm.
group and we study the Gita. And like being in that association just made me like be at the Bhakti Center more. And then this administration position opened up and I emailed Kishore and I was like, let me help you. I want to do this. And then he hired me as basically his assistant. And now I'm just like there all the time. And it's wild because like I tell my best friend about this and she's like, you've been literally talking about that place since I met you. And that was over almost a decade ago. And even if I look back in old journals, like 2013, I had a random run in with Radhanath Swami because I was like there having like a ladies meeting and I turned the corner and he was just standing there. And I had met him before, like in passing through my old roommate, him and Danyodar Swami. And they like remembered me.
Oh.
And I was floored. How did you remember me? You know? And I like wrote it in my journal how like I felt like I was in the right place and I'm finally going in the right direction. And that was August 21st of 2013.
That's a
So
day before my
now,
birthday.
wow. So now like over a decade later, I'm there. So it took a lot. But I'm also realizing that I had to go through all those things
Yes.
to
Yes.
become this person.
And
And
that's
lately
why,
in a lot of
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. Don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
um lately in a lot of my classes, I'm getting a lot of 20 something females, 20 something girls, and they keep coming back. And like, even in recovery group, and they keep showing up and like tell me how much they love my classes. And I feel like I am becoming the woman that I needed then, like a version, I needed to go through all of that stuff. So the forgiveness is coming a little easier with that because I'm like, oh, this is like your dharma and you
Yes.
had to go through all
Wonderful.
that and deal with that so that you can be this.
Well, I want to thank you so much for all the service that you're doing with that because that's how it works. You take your experience and your strength and your hope, you turn it, you make the best out of a bad deal. You churn it, you turn it, you make it into like all of this, you evolve, you mature, and then you give it to others. And you're now in a position where you can do that. And, it's not like none of us reach a point where we're like, well, now we're good. And now we can, teach everyone my ceiling is someone's floor, So it's
Right.
not like I'm like evolved I'm not saying that we evolved to a point where we're able to be the perfect teachers, but that what we've learned as we learn, we can give. And I really appreciate that you're in that position and you're using the resources to do that and to serve and to help others and to offer space for others and to turn, your life, which was tumultuous. You had a lot of stuff going on. And I know a lot of the details that we didn't talk about on this because we've talked, you and I. And there's been a lot, and it's something that I really appreciate about you, you know, um, and everyone has a different story and everyone has a different thing. I used to think that 12 steps was the only way to get clean and sober. I didn't think that there was any other way. But I love Bhakti because I've seen so many people who have been able to quit drugs and alcohol, who have been able to quit really like the most like downtrodden, like street people, able to enter Bhakti and understand what the yoga process is, um, and to become clean and sober through that. Um,
Yeah.
so, if if the 12 steps can give you another perspective about, because 12 steps is like the 9 processes of bhakti, and the 9, it really is. It's the 9 it's bhakti and yoga is bhakti yoga and the 12 steps are so similar. It's just the language is different and the culture is different.
Right.
So so I'm so happy that you're able to share that. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks. So go ahead.
Thank
Sorry.
you. I'm happy to share it. And I'm still pretty new to the 12 steps. I never really worked them. I mean, I worked yoga philosophy. I worked the Yoga Sutras a lot. But I also learned, like, through community. We had to do like a community project in one of my trainings. I went to an AA meeting because I always knew that I wanted to teach yoga for recovery, because I knew that that's what saved my life.
Right.
And I, like, in sitting in a meeting, I'm like, oh, this is like teacher training. They're like sharing philosophy, and there's like, oh, okay, this is like the same, you know? So I very much get that. And now that I've like had the preliminary stripping, I really want to, I'm really like looking at the 12 steps a lot more. I've really been stuck at step 3 though. Not like stuck, just more of like, I really want to just explore it as much as possible, especially being at the Bhakti Center, because like the surrender and devotion that I see and like can feel from people, it's just like, it's like my heart explodes just watching it. And like I went to Thursday night kirtan last night, and people just like throwing themselves on the floor at the deities and just like dancing, and it's just amazing. And like last night, for the first time, I like spontaneously was like dancing and like doing my own thing in the back, and like I've never really felt that before. So like I felt it last night in a way. Like I've danced and stuff, but it's mostly been because like people next to me are dancing and like I'm doing it with them, or they like grab my hand. But I was like in the back by myself, and it just like came over me, and I was like, all right, we're settling in. So I'm very much in a space of deep self-inquiry and curiosity. And like, I really want to just study more about bhakti and be more involved. And, I'm collabing with the Vedic astrologer there to do moon circles, and
who's the Vedic astrologer there?
Kavi Kanapura.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of Kavi.
Yeah. And like planning a retreat with another yoga teacher there. And it's just like all these things that I've been, overthinking and planning about for the last decade are like finally
just manifesting,
coming out. Yeah. So it's like, why wouldn't I surrender to this energy that is just like pulling me in,
welcoming you with open arms,
showing me all
join the cult
that are possible.
Come and join the cult.
Well, it's just like validation, like, yes, you are capable, and yes, you can do these things, and yes, you have been through some shit, but you can also like move forward and do these things because you're not that person anymore. Like this is like your new self, and you have these new legs to walk with, and like, why the fuck not? Like,
I think that's great.
What would be the point of not doing it?
And I think that's great because it's also like, when I think a lot of people get shy away from holding space because they don't think that they're expert enough. Like you said, you don't know too much about the 12 steps, but you're holding a 12-step Bhakti recovery meeting, but you're willing to learn with people who you're in the space with. And this is what we all do. This is what I do. I'm 27 years clean and sober, but I'm not telling you that I can, I mean, I'm just one arm length away from a drink and a drug like anyone else, so so it's, for me, it's the same. Like, I'm there to learn as well. I'm there to serve, but I'm also there to learn. I don't have to be the teacher. You know, I'm a trusted servant of the
Right.
meeting, and we walk this together. And all you got to do is be willing to open that space and walk it together and ask Krishna for help. The third step, you know, we give our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God,
Right.
you know.
And that's, I mean, space isn't about teaching anyone anything. It's just about being there. That was actually one of my
And
words of the
sharing our
day
experience,
today
strength, and hope. Yeah.
in journaling. It wound up being space. It was a couple of words because today is also a friend of mine's birthday who died in 2015 from an overdose.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, which felt, thank you, which felt very fitting of doing this. I realized that yesterday after I agreed to do this interview. I'm like, oh, wow, it's his birthday. You know, and that's another thing. My
Oh,
friend
that's
started dying. I'm 39. My friend started dying in my early 30s. And like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? But yeah, the holding space part, it's like I can show up and hold space. And for a long time, I felt like I was doing that. And like, who's holding space for me? No one. Like, who's holding space for me? But now I'm in a space where like Krishna is holding space for me. I'm in this like this bubble of space holders. And even though like last night in Kirtan, like I didn't know majority of those people, but like everyone's singing, dancing with each other and supporting. It's just like it's this space that's being held collectively, and it's like all in the hands of Krishna. And I'm finally like really leaning into that surrender of, yes, I am continually holding space for others, but like my space is being held. Like
And don't
I'm
forget
good.
what your mother said. What did she say? What did your mother say? She said,
Don't
never
forget Jesus
forget Jesus
Christ,
Christ.
the
And it's
most
true.
magnificent mystic yogi. I mean, it is true. It is very true.
I love it. I think
Yeah,
that's
I
going
would
to be the
never.
title of this. Don't forget what your mother said.
Listen, my mom was right about a lot of things. And there's a lot of things in my life where I'm like, fuck, I should have listened to my mother, man.
I know. Actually,
I really should have.
I can't agree with that, because my mother, I should never, like, I just never listened to my mom, and I'm glad I never did. So,
Yeah.
you know,
No,
I feel bad
I
for
had to
her.
learn things the hard way on my own. But my
Yeah, me
mom
too.
usually called him out first,
Yeah, I think, you know,
including my ex-husband.
you know
I
what
was
I could
forbidden
say?
to see him.
I can safely say that even if my mother spoke a lot of sense, and I wouldn't have listened anyway. So it's not like I
Oh
can't be like,
yeah.
oh, my mother didn't, you know, blah, blah, blah. She didn't raise me. She didn't raise me right. She didn't do this. That might be true. But even if she did raise me right and did this and do that, I wouldn't have listened. I know it. I wouldn't have listened. There would have been nothing I would have listened to, because it was about me and how I'm going to do it, period. And
Right.
I was like that from the day I slithered out of her vajays. I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah.
anyway, Mary
Yeah.
Allison, I am so grateful that you came, and I'm so glad we had this talk. I love speaking with you. We can talk
Me
forever.
too. Oh, we
And we're going to do a part 2 at some point, but the
Yeah.
time's up now, and let us, is there any way anyone can get in touch with you?
You can find me on Instagram at Heart.
And we didn't hear that one. It's heart fart. I love it.
Yeah.
Heart fart.
Fought with your heart,
What's
Open
that?
heart always. Fight with your
Yes.
heart. A life motto. But yeah, I'm at Heart, or if you're in New York City, come to Boxy, come to Kirtan, come to
You're breaking
yoga.
up again. Oh, there we go. We got you.
Ah, okay.
We
Well,
got you.
again, if you're in New York State, Boxy Center to Kirtan, come to yoga.
Yes, Bhakti Center. Check it out. Friday nights. What time did we say? 6:30? Did you? No. What time?
7 to 9 p.m.
7:30 to 9 p.m. Friday nights at the Bhakti Center, Bhakti Recovery Group, donation-based space that Mary Allison holds for recovery and for anyone who's just interested. Just go. I mean, it's not like you have to be an addict or a codependent, or I'm pretty sure every single one of you got some dysfunction.
Well,
So
we all got
yeah, we all got that. So thanks again. Thanks for your service, Mary Allison. Thank you for coming, and I love you loads. Mwah. This concludes another episode. Thanks for listening. In order for me to serve this community to the best of my ability, I welcome feedback. Please write your feedback at bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget to follow and give us a 5-star rating. Share this with family and friends. If you'd like to join our Bhakti Recovery community, or just find out what we're all about, please visit our website at www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. That's www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. There are no dues or fees, and we meet daily. If you or someone you know is struggling with addictions and/or associated behaviors, you will find links in our show notes to various 12-step programs. Nobody seeking recovery need ever be alone again.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.